This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you're in the right place. Thanks for checking out one of our past live sessions. If you had fun and enjoyed it, we'll hope you tune in for one of our future lives. And remember, if you're one of our paid members, you can watch these and all the rest of them anytime on your platform. So hi everyone, and welcome to this week's live little mini lesson. We're going to be doing these kind of fall pie inspired cupcakes. And it's a great chance to get creative with your cake flavors and also your toppings. So I've done this one, just kind of looks like a little cherry pie, and we'll go ahead and get started, and then I'll show you some little twists on this and maybe make some flavor suggestions, right? So I'm gonna get my little tray out so you can see what I've used. I'm gonna do a series of dots with 3, 5, and 12, some lines with the number 7, a shell border with the 7, and also I'm gonna use number 21 to do a little like whipped cream swirl on some of them. So just to give you an idea, I have my number 12, and anytime I'm doing a dot, I just want to lift it up off the surface I'm piping on about a good 1/4 of an inch, right? More if the tip is bigger. Oops, sorry, air bubble. Less if it's smaller. Squeeze until I get a nice mound. Stop squeezing, and then you can just circle the bag to get a nice round dot. Right? And I'll go ahead and repeat the process so you can see it with the smaller ones. And I'll make sure that this isn't blocked. So just hold it up off the surface, squeeze, stop, and give it a little twist. Right? Make sure everyone can see.
Yes, it's all buttercream. Please hold all your questions to the end of the class.
Yeah, if you can. Just not because we don't want to answer them, but because they often scroll by too quickly and we can't see them and we miss them. So I'll make sure I ask for questions so that we don't miss any of them, right? And then I have a number 7, and I'm going to do lines. And lines are a good thing to practice on a sheet tray, right? And I find the thing that people do when they're first getting started is you get nervous and you start squeezing, right? And so there's frosting coming out before you touch the surface. That means you can't control where it goes. You often get a big buildup. And the other thing that happens is you'll continue squeezing as you're pulling away, right? And a lot of times that's fear and nerves. So sometimes it just means slowing it down, taking a deep breath, and practicing, right? So just hold the bag without actually squeezing, right? Touch the surface. And don't start squeezing until you're ready to actually pipe your line. And you can see you get a much nicer, cleaner start. And then when you're gonna finish, actually touch down, stop squeezing. You can see I release my fingers. And if the paper will behave, and then pull away. And you can see you get a much cleaner start and finish to your lines, right? And so that's one little thing I always give people to work on when they're first starting. Get some paper, take some extra color after a project, and just pipe a bunch of lines and work on those starts and finishes, and you'll really clean up the look of your projects. Right? And the other thing we're going to do with this today is make a shell border. So when you do shells, you're going to hold the bag at a 45-degree angle, touch down on the surface, right? Start squeezing. As you lift the tip up a little bit, it'll allow the frosting to balloon out and roll over, and then you want to pull down, touch the surface, and keep pulling. And that gives you a nice teardrop shape, right? We're going to repeat that overlapping the tail. Sorry, I'm going to get that up there so we're past the chat log, right? So keep going. And when you string them together, you get a nice shell border. And you can do this with plain tips or with star tips, right? And if you want to do them really close together, it makes it almost like a string of pearls, right? So you can vary the look based on how far apart you space your shells, right? And then the last tip I'm going to use today is a 21, right? And typically when I do rosettes, I start in the middle. I imagine it's like a clock face. Go up to noon, spiral around. When I get to 9, I taper off my pressure, right? And start finishing it. And that gives you a nice flat rosette. But we're trying to make it look like whipped cream piled up on a pie. So in this case, I'm gonna keep going. So I'm gonna do the same thing where I pull up, swirl around, but instead of tapering off my pressure, I just pull it in. So I'm doing increasingly smaller little spirals, and then I pull a little peak at the top, right? Oops. I'm gonna try and hold those sideways so you guys can see, right? So then I get my nice little kind of whipped cream swirl look for the top of my little mini pie cupcakes, right? So I'm gonna pull over a cupcake, get started, and I'm just gonna do a series of dots in 3 colors of red, right? I'm gonna cover the whole surface and just leave a little rim on the outside. So I'm gonna start with my largest one and just make a nice random pattern. And I'm not too worried about making perfect dots, but if you're trying to master that skill, it's a good time to practice, right? And you can always make them slimmer and flatter if you want a little less frosting, right? Go in with my second color. And using more than one color just gives you some nice natural variety. It's not really necessary, but it helps give it a little depth. And my goal here is just to cover it up so that there's no cupcake showing. Right, and you can always go back in, fill in, do a little second layer, give it a little height, right? And now we have a nice, well-covered surface, right? You can see it's got little dots. I'm not being too exact, so I've got some peaks on mine. And then we're gonna go around the outside and do the little shell border. But I found while practicing yesterday that it's a little easier if you do the lattice first, right? So I'm going to just divide it in the middle, right? Start on one side, go across, and then I found it a little easier if I rotated it and went the other direction. So basically, you're just making a giant plus sign in the middle, right? And if you get a little break in your line, don't sweat it, just let it happen. You can go back in and correct it really easy, right? I feel like sometimes as a beginner, those are the things that make us panic. Don't worry about it, it's just frosting, right? And then that sets you up, and the area is nice and divided to go in and add 2 more in that direction, and then 2 more in the opposite direction. Right. So I've got my little lattice on top, and I'm just going to hold it in place, right, and go around and put a nice little shell border all around the outside. And any place it doesn't meet up, just add a little bit of extra to your line. Oh, thanks for the hearts, guys. I can kind of see them out of my periphery. Right. And so this is a simple way to cover it in buttercream, right? And I've used buttercream for all the details. Another thing you can do is use either candy, so think M&Ms, jelly beans, Skittles, anything that's soft and has a flavor that'll go. Sorry, these aren't the best in that bowl, but also, if I don't kill my cupcake, using some dried fruit. So some dried blueberries in this case, but whatever you have on hand, maybe dried cranberries or apricots or something you can cut up small that'll give you a nice color contrast. And if they're nice and firm, you can always soak them in a little juice or liqueur or something else to help give it a little extra flavor and a little punch. And I'm gonna do just a little alternate version of this, right? So I'm gonna take some of my dark color, give it a nice squeeze out there, take my spatula, go all the way around, right? So that I have a nice kind of flat covering. And really, I just want this so that I can stick on some of those blueberries. And then it's a little easier, especially for these, if they have a few minutes to set up in the fridge. But I took just a little bit, right, of jam and I had some blackberry on hand and I warmed it up, and you can see you can use it if that surface is nice and hard and the fruit is stuck to it, to just give it a little coating, and then it has a little shine and it looks like a lovely little mixed berry filling then. So you can kind of create some faux pie fillings just using some dried fruit. We always make a lot of biscotti and other kinds of cookies and things that have dried fruits in them, so we always have a ton of different kinds on hand. And then you can give it the same finish, right? Go across, do your little lattice, and then I'll go back around the edges and do a little shell border. And this is a nice way to add some extra flavor. So if you have things like dried raisins, you can always do things like soak them in rum, and you can get really fun with the flavors especially for the holiday season. I know we have a nice orange whiskey cake that we like to do that would be great with like marmalade on top, maybe some dried apricots. And now I'm just dreaming about food and flavor combinations, right? So then that gives you a nice kind of jeweled look to it, and it adds a little extra punch of flavor, and it's a great way to add a little something extra to your cake combinations. So there's two variations, similar technique. And if you want to go the extra step, you can always do things like add your little whipped cream swirls on top, right? So cute, fun project for fall, some interesting ways to add some new flavors to your cakes. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.